Hello, science fiction fans, and welcome to this year's China Science Fiction Conference. This is American science fiction author Kevin J. Anderson, and I was very happy to attend in person in Beijing 2 years ago. This year, I'm talking to you from the other side of the world, which seems like science fiction in itself. This event will inspire science fiction readers and writers all over the world, and I wish you great success with the conference. I hope you enjoy meeting your fellow science fiction readers and writers. My talk today is about finding inspiration for alien worlds on Earth. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you some slides. There we go. Finding inspiration for alien worlds on Earth. This is for the China Science Fiction Convention in Beijing. Let me introduce myself for a moment. I'm Kevin J. Anderson. I have published over 170 books in 31 languages. Many of my books are being translated now into Chinese by PHEI publishers for my Saga of Seven Sons series, as well as Chongqing for my Dune series books, as well as my Crystal Doors trilogy. I hope that you will read some of them. They've been published in English and in many different languages. I write science fiction and fantasy and thrillers. Now, a science fiction book takes readers to strange places. When you pick up a book, you're transported to different worlds and you have an adventure there. Sometimes you may go to Mars, to a galactic empire, to a fantasy land, or to some alien relics. A reader must be convinced that the story and the alien world are real. There, I moved my picture around. That means that the writer has to convey that strange place using details and descriptions, sensory smells and sounds, so that you feel that you're actually in that alien place. But since a writer doesn't live in an alien world, how can we convey all that? How do we come up with these great descriptions of things that we've never seen or experienced? Well, a writer has a good imagination. That's why we're writers. So a writer can use his imagination just to create all of the different places that their adventure has to be set in. On another hand, though, the writer can use more than just imagination. He can use actual inspiration and experiences to make fiction seem real. Many times that a writing class will teach you that you're supposed to write what you know about. So if you're familiar with a certain place or for types of people or a kind of job profession, write about what you know about. So that means that the more that you know about, the more that you experience and see and feel and touch with your own hands, the more you can describe as a writer. So therefore, I try to do that as much as I can. I try to get as many different details so I can use it in my writing. I go to different places on Earth and I look for alien environments, strange places for research and inspiration. I go to the deserts, I go into the mountains, I go to the oceans or onto islands. I can climb into snowy landscapes, or I can see exotic cities. That way, I have many different convincing details I can put into my writing. Let me show you some examples of some of these things and how they're used in my own books. For instance, some of the science fiction books that I write and I'm most famous for are my books in the series called Dune. Dune was written by Frank Herbert originally in the 1960s, but it has had many different sequels, and there's a big new movie coming out just next month. You might have seen about it. This is Dune. It comes out there. We'll move that again so you could see the posters. These are the posters for Dune. Dune takes place on a vast desert with giant sandworms, and there's military battles and galactic politics. Oops, there we go. So I have written many of these Dune novels. These are just some of the covers of the ones that I've written. That means when I'm writing about Dune, I have to imagine the desert landscapes. I have to feel or think about how the sand feels and what the dust smells like in the air and what the heat is all around you and the vast open sand dune landscapes. This is just one painting from one of my covers. Here's another one. You can see the rolling dunes, all that sand, all the wasteland. And so how do I just imagine this if I don't live there? Well, I can go and try to visit. There are many deserts here in the United States and around the world. I've been to the Sahara Desert in Morocco. I've been to the southwestern desert in the United States. These are some of the huge sand dunes not too far from where I live. These are canyons in the state called Utah, where there are many, many desert gorges and the Grand Canyon. There are also some cactuses and rock formations. This is a place called Joshua Tree National Monument. This way I can see what the plant life looks like, what the trees and what the air smells like, what the insects are. All of these things I put into my science fiction so that it can feel more real to you as the reader. This is another strange desert place with weird rock formations. It's called the Painted Rocks. It's very interesting, and I use it to describe some of the settings where I write my stories. Now, I've also written many books for Star Wars. I think many of you have seen Star Wars. This is a scene from The Empire Strikes Back that takes place on the ice planet Hoth. Well, when I was writing Star Wars books, when I took my characters to the frozen ice planet or up onto the polar ice caps on some other capital world, I had a different challenge. I had to use my different imagination to come up with the right details. So I had to go find cold and snow. I live near a big mountain range called the Rocky Mountains. I've gone snowshoeing. I climb up on these glaciers. I can see the snowfall. I can smell the cold and hear the wind. All of these details go into exactly what I'm describing. Other science fiction landscapes can be set in jungle planets or on island archipelagos in fantasy. So I've been there. Some people may live there, so it doesn't seem anything special to them. But if it isn't your normal place, the details, the humidity in the air, the palm trees, the vines, the flowers, the insects, the crashing waves, all of these things go into your description of a science fiction setting. Going to some of these places inspires my descriptions. Here's an example of some strange desert canyon rock formations and arches that I've used, and you can see this picture looks very similar to the painting that was on a cover of one of my science fiction novels called Scattered Suns. It doesn't have to just be in the wilderness or alien natural places. There are exotic cities and amazing architecture that appears in many different science fiction novels and movies. You can see some of these paintings from a couple of my covers right here. And if you look at the architecture, you might be realizing that when I visited China a couple of years ago, I received a lot of inspiration. We spent an entire day in the Forbidden City, and obviously some of these structures and the palaces are beautiful things for me to add into like galactic imperial palaces or a powerful wizard's castle or something like that. These are all used into my imagination. Now, many great fantasy adventures like The Lord of the Rings here are set deep in the mountains. Well, the best way to get inspiration for how to describe the mountains are to go to the mountains and observe. So here I am. I've climbed to the summits of many very high mountain peaks. These are over 14,000 feet high. I believe that's about 4,000 or 5,000 meters high. These are at the summit, very up in the thin air. So you can see that you're above the clouds looking down at all of the rafts of moisture there, and it's blue skies and there aren't many people around. It's just very beautiful and inspirational. You can see how difficult the toil is to go up there and that big climb. But look at the views. It allows your imagination to get broader and broader, and you can see all the way to the horizon. But I have to say, sometimes it's very hard work to get all the way to the top. But I do that hard work in order to get the best descriptions to put into my fantasy novels, my quest adventures, my great journeys. So, all throughout my experiences that I see, the places I go to, the odd landscapes that I visit, these add to my imagination. And then I use my imagination to create a good science fiction book. Then, when I've got my good science fiction book and you read it, a good science fiction book inspires your imagination. So I hope that by me visiting all these places and describing them, it helps to convey that image to you so we can all experience science fiction together by using good descriptions and bringing to life alien worlds and futuristic cultures. There, we'll finish that right here. And thank you very much for listening to me and for joining the Beijing China Science Fiction Convention. I hope you have a tremendous time and you will inspire people all around the world. Keep reading science fiction and keep using your imagination. This is Kevin J. Anderson. Thank you very much.